So our speaker today is Rachel Wood from Z Energy, and quite a few here will know that Z Energy have been supplying our speakers for the past year at these workshops, and that's part of their skill volunteering program. I am quite aware of Z Energy's CSR, and they're quite comprehensive in terms of what they do to give back and support the communities within which they operate. So thank you very much, Zed. So Rachel is very, very knowledgeable about change. At Zed, she looks after the people side of the business changes that Zed makes. And one change program she's just completed, to give you an example, it's quite technical, so I need to read my notes, is the construction and commissioning of Zed's brand new biodiesel plant in Auckland, and the building was completed at the start of June, so I imagine for Rachel that was a real moment. And that's a first for New Zealand. She's still working on the integration of new biodiesel products into Zed's business, and they're about to be released to market in a few weeks' time. Rachel is a psychology graduate, and she has quite a background in terms of change across government, the government sector as well as corporate. And like many of Zed's staff, on the side she's also working with a group to help them with their change program. So if we could welcome up Rachel.
I think you've oversold me quite a lot. It sounds like I just built a biodiesel plant. No, not quite that. But thank you very much for such a lovely introduction. And thank you so much for having me along here today. What I'd like to do is talk through exactly what it says here, communicating change. Working through, talking about some basic principles to do with communication. I'm going to try and keep this as relaxed and as user-friendly as possible. Try and stay away from all the technical terms that I could be chucking in here, and just make it something that hopefully you guys can go back to your organisations, and even if you just take one key gem away with you, I'll be super happy with that. Yeah? Alright, so I'm just going to jump straight into this. Now I just want to set the foundation for how this will work. I am really, really relaxed when it comes to presentations. I'm not relaxed inside, I'm very nervous, but I'm relaxed about how you guys interact with me. If you have a question as I'm talking through something, please feel free to chat to me and talk up at that time. We're also going to have some time for questions towards the end, so if you'd like to wait until then, that's absolutely fine as well. I will have this presentation available to you. It's got quite a lot of slides in it, so it's quite a lot of information, and I'm really conscious that you might want to make some notes. Feel free to do that, but just remember that this will be available to you afterwards as well, in case you just want to put your notes away.
And I also forgot to mention that we've got Harry from Zed at the back who's videoing the speaker, and that will be available on our website too, in case you prefer to watch it rather than take notes.
I know. And we came together in the taxi, and I was hoping that she'd actually forgot the video camera, but apparently she remembered it. So there we go. All right, so we'll just get started. What I want to do is set the foundation. If you understand change and understand change management, you'll then understand, or more easily understand, how communications plays such a key role in change. So in a nutshell, what is change? And this is not to tell you guys to suck eggs, but you just need to go right back to basics and understand what is change. Change is something where something is moving from a current to a future state, and as Sue really nicely summed up, it can be planned, it can be unplanned, it can be proactive or reactive, something that can you determine how the change is going to happen, or it's something that can be done to you and then you've just got to go along with that and move through the change. It can be over a really short period of time. Often those are they can be the reactive ones, the ones that are done to you rather than the planned change. Or planned change can be anywhere from a month to years in the making. This biodiesel plant that Zed is just finished commissioning up in Auckland. This has been a 5-year project. This has been a long change piece of work to put in place. So that just gets us clear on what change is. So you've got change. How do you drive change? It could be you, it could be your organisation, you could be the leader that's driving, you could be somebody that's a passenger in change. what you want to do is get really clear on what your vision is, what's your end goal, what's your future state. And again, just going back into what Sue said, sometimes if this change has been done to you, if it's reactive change, you're going to have to stop and pause for a second and go, okay, what does this actually mean to us? What does this look like? How can we keep true to ourselves, our values? How can we link into what we stand for? And know what your end vision is. It's a little bit easier to have an end vision when you're doing the planning and leading the change, in which case you just need to make sure you're articulating that end vision very, very carefully. And as I said up here, honestly, this is such a key takeaway. Sometimes the best start is to stop and pause. And it could be a little pause, it could be a longer pause. Just get really clear on what this is meaning, what needs to change, what needs to carry on. So what are you stopping, what are you changing, and move forward from there. Understand what you need to do in order to reach your change. Sorry, I'm going to have to keep walking past you guys. I'm trying so carefully not to do this and get in front of that. So systematic change. So what is this? What is change management? So you have change, you have your drivers driving through change. How do you manage change? So there's this thing called change management. It sounds very technical, but it's actually quite basic. And in a nutshell, communications is the cornerstone of effective change management. What change management this is a description for it, systematic approach to managing the people side of change. And the key thing in this is people. So when there's change, there's invariably a technical side to the change and a people side to the change. Change management, in respect of what I'm talking about as change management, is very much the people side of change. Instead, we call it business change. I don't know if that's a reference you guys are familiar with. Business change, I'm not doing the actual technical side. I'm not building the biodiesel plant or commissioning it or doing that work, but I'm ensuring that the people that are working within that are connected. Anybody that's impacted is aware of what's going on. They have a voice in the change and they come on the journey. So as over the last few years, change management has become more prevalent in businesses. It's something that it's what they classify as an emergent profession. Thank goodness for me, it gives me a job. But people have decided, okay, in order for change to happen, it doesn't just happen. Well, it used to just happen. Now they recognise the need for thought and processes and a really considered approach to go into making change happen successfully. And I forgot to say, people are really willing and able to move through change. Often instead, that's how we term it. Are people really willing and able to move through the change? Are they ready? Do they know the change is coming? Do they understand what it's about? Do they understand why we change it? So have we got them engaged? Are they willing to make the change? And are they able to make the change? In other words, have we given them the capability, the learning? Have we supported them enough so that they understand what they need to do so they're actually able to do it? So, and this is what I mentioned before, successful change management is founded on effective communications. There's a whole bunch of change management theories and principles and activities out there. Communications is absolutely the cornerstone of it. It engages the stakeholders, it manages your people impacts, it helps build capability, learning, knowledge, making people able to make the change. And then it looks at making it stick, embedding the change into this, and sitting behind all of those change management principles and activities is communication. So when do we use change management? This is a key takeaway. If you take away one thing today, this is it. Even though I'll probably say that quite a lot, this is really it. This is the one thing I want you to remember, is that you use change management when you need to take people on a journey. So for change management, it is a journey. I know sometimes it cannot feel like a journey because it's happened to you, the change has been put onto you, but as much as you can, you need to make it a journey. When it's a planned change, you don't want to just dump it on the people that you plan the change on. You want to bring them along with you. So you create engagement, create understanding, you reduce anxiety, you provide clarity for the people, and really move them through this. And, just before we move into our own side, one key thing to remember is that change management is actually everywhere. It's just not always termed as change management. So you think about your everyday life. Every time you're asking someone to do something a little bit differently, think a little bit differently, act a little bit differently, that's all change. And that can all be managed, and that's all change management. If I think about, I've got an 11-year-old daughter, and getting her ready for school, although it has got a little bit easier this year now she's in a uniform, has been a nightmare. She would just change her outfits about 5 times each morning. That is no exaggeration. She doesn't get it from me, before you say that. And so I had to literally change manage my child, work with her overtime, let her know ahead of time, the night before, right, we need to leave at this time, this is what you need to do to get ready, reinforce it, tell her why we're doing things, recognise her effort in the morning when she's on to outfit number 3. We've got 5 minutes to go. It's everywhere, okay, in our lives there is change management, and if you can think of it like that, strip away the technical, confusing side of it and think, okay, how can I apply this to what I'm doing? And I'm going to give you an example of something that happened in New Zealand to all of us. So this was one big massive piece of change management. And how many would you have thought about at the time, oh, this is change management? There might be a few of you, but I reckon most of you would not have recognised it as that and just gone, oh, this is happening. We're changing the flag, we're voting on it, we're going to do something about it. This is one massive piece of change management, and they created a very, very successful journey. Now, regardless of what you think of all of this, and how you think of the whole idea of the thing, to start off with the flag referendum, there was a journey. They let you know, government, that this is what they're going to do. They gave lots of comms across lots of different mediums, social media, paid media, lots of different ways. Everybody in New Zealand would have heard about the flag referendum. They offered up meetings around the country. 7 people came to. It doesn't mean it always gets taken up on very well, but the thing is that they created that journey. They let people be part of that journey. These were the final 5 that we got to choose from, and people out in New Zealand, little old New Zealanders, they got to design these. Have a look at these. This was part of the journey. So this is what happens when you bring people on a journey and give them an opportunity to be involved. It doesn't always necessarily turn out how you want it to look. But it creates a journey, and it gets people engaged, and it gets people talking. I'm pretty sure some of these even made it onto late night talk show in the USA. Did some of you see that? I was watching it and I was like, oh my gosh, they're making fun of us, but they talked about it. They got word out there, and this is fantastic. Everybody was part of it. And then we went through this. We got down to our final 5, and then we got to vote. And this is the next part of the journey. You got to vote. Doesn't always get the best results. And for those of you who can't read this very well, it says, please take this leaflet, tape it to your shoe, then stick it as far as you can up John Key's, and that's scripted out. Thanks, and it's got a smiley face, because smiley faces make everything alright. Should put that on there. Down the bottom, vote for nothing. None, they are awful. Now, just to be clear, this is not my voting paper. This is actually my friend's. I took a little photo of it. Who is a comms manager, so I just want to let you know that. She would die if she knew that this is part of my presentation. So the thing is, it's not always the best results. It means that vote never went through. But people were engaged, there was a journey, and they got a result because a decision was made. We kept our flag, we didn't change it up. And regardless of what you think of that decision or how the journey was for you, there was a journey, and that's what I really just want to highlight, especially with that voting paper. Right, I did check with Sue if that was all right to put that up. Right, so change management, why is it important? Hopefully you're getting the gist of some of this already. It manages your risk. It's such a good risk management tool. It makes sure that the right people are talking to the right people at the right time. Nothing's going to fall between the gaps, or hopefully not. It'll allow you to identify those gaps ahead of time, because it's also a really good planning tool. Irrespective of whether this change is a proactive change, where you've had the opportunity to design, plan it, put your vision in place, that's your planning platform. You can still create a planning platform when a change is reactive, when it's been done to you. It's been done to you, but it's up to you now to decide how you move forward with that, and you can plan and you can put steps in place around it, and change management will help you do that. But most importantly, it looks after your greatest asset, and that's your people. That's your volunteers, that's your staff, that's your stakeholders, that's your people in the wider community who you're working with, who you're helping. It looks after those people. And if you don't have it, things can go terribly wrong. And this is a massive example, and I know this is a bit extreme, but it's really interesting. So I thought, and it's all about comms, that's what I thought I'd tell you about it. Who knows what this is? Anyone know what this is? A spacecraft? Yes, the Mars. It is the Mars orbiter. It's NASA's Mars orbiter, which they launched in on December 11th, 1998. And what its job was to do was to get up to Mars and then send lots of information back to Earth as a communications relay. So it's a communications tool about the climate on Mars. And what happened was, it went all the way out there. Oh, sorry, I'll reverse back a bit. There was NASA working on this, and there was a whole bunch of international rocket scientists working all around the world as part of the team working on this. They sent it up, very, very successful. 9 months later, it got to Mars. How cool is that? Only there was a massive comms fail, which meant that when this got up to Mars, it was sent on a trajectory too close to the planet, entered the atmosphere, disintegrated straight away. It was a massive $650 million fail, is what it was. And $650 million back then was quite a lot of money. It's quite a lot of money in today's age. And then what had gone wrong is so simple, is that the US-based team, so the NASA team, were using imperial measurements. And you know what I'm going to say, eh? And then everybody else, so all the other rocket scientists around the world, were all using metric. And NASA should have been using metric, was the bottom line. And that's such a little thing. You think these guys are rocket scientists. They would have figured this out. You know, when I first started doing business change like what I do now, I had somebody who was my coach, my mentor, and this person used to always say to me, used to irritate me, "This isn't rocket science, Rach. Figure it out. It's not rocket science." These guys are rocket scientists. They didn't figure it out. It's just it was a small communication mishap between them. And look at what it failed. Imagine if they got up to Mars then. And they got to Mars last year, was it? Late last year? And found water. They would have found water ages ago. So that's an extreme example, but you can see how it's such a little thing that even the cleverest of clever people can just forget to communicate with other people and something falls through the gaps. Things can go terribly wrong. So this is setting you up the foundation. We've got change, we've got the drivers, what change management is. It's all about the people. So you've got all this happening, you've got change happening, you've got change being driven. But how do these people that are working through change, how do they react to change? That is a key consideration, because everybody reacts to change differently. There is no one-size-fits-all approach, definitely not, and as much as you can, you need to be thinking about this and considering it when you're working through any change approach. And there's 3 key things that you should look at, if possible. People's personality preferences to who you are. So how many of you done like Myers-Briggs, Hogan, psych assessments, anything like that? Yes? How many have you done the very sophisticated one that's called Owl, Eagle, Dove, Peacock? Yes? We recently did that one at work in a project that I'm on. And that just lets you know how people, what they kind of like, how they think and feel, how people react under stress. With the Dove, Eagle, Owl, Peacock one, it's all birds obviously the clever ones are like the owls and the eagles, and then you've got doves, much more sensitive, me, and a peacock, which means they're a bit showy, get their energy from people, also me. And so there's me, dove eagle, working with a whole bunch of owls. I'm not dove eagle, I'm dove peacock, a whole bunch of owls and eagles. These are the people that are brainy, that are leaders, very clever, know their stuff, and there's me, get a bit sensitive and they talk to me badly. So if you get a chance to understand, it doesn't have to be that technical, which actually wasn't that technical. Just realise that people, how you're approaching something, someone else might approach it differently. How you're talking to somebody, they might listen to it different than how you'd expect them to listen to it. Learning styles, practical versus theory. Everyone has a preference when it comes to their learning style, and by using the right communication tools, you can work effectively with how they best learn things. Some people like you guys like to come and sit and listen in a workshop environment. Other people would rather read something. Other people like me, I'm a doer. I like to actually do it, and then I'll learn it and understand it. And lastly, motivators. Motivators is such a key thing, and I reckon you guys as a group, part of Volunteer Wellington, would get this more than other people would get it. What motivates you? It's many studies have shown that monetary reward is not always a big motivator, and I think that's particularly relevant in this sector. Autonomy, mastery and purpose are much higher. Give someone the power to make some decisions, be part of the plan, part of the process, bring them along on the journey, help them get good at it, mastery, give them the skills, give them the tools to be able to work through the change, that's your mastery. And then purpose, people with their roles, their values, if they feel they're making a difference, if they feel they're contributing in any way, little, big, it makes such a huge difference to that person. There's a good example of this is, how many of you got kids that play Minecraft? Anybody? Yes? For those of you who don't have kids, do you know what Minecraft is? Have you heard of it? It's like 80s computer graphics. It's really amazing. Where they build things like little planets or rooms, and my daughter, oh my gosh, she does it all the time. Anyway, the guy that designed it, owns Minecraft, billionaire. He sold it late last year for about 2.6 billion. He sold Minecraft. And then it was all over the media. He sold it for all this money and was extremely unhappy afterwards. Like, oh, you poor thing. But the thing was, sarcasm aside, the thing was, that was his purpose, that was his thing, that what he's doing. And if he hadn't thought ahead and gone, okay, I need to make peace with this and move on from that, but I need something else to channel my energy into, then you've lost your purpose. I teach group fitness classes at Les Mills, and which is a fancy way of saying I'm a aerobics instructor. And I've been doing it for many years, like many years. And each year I go, is it still appropriate for me to be in lycra bouncing around in front of a room full of people where half of them I could honestly be their mum? So, but that to me, I'd need something to replace that, because that gives me something, teaching classes and being involved in the fitness industry, I don't get from anywhere else. I'd need to find a different purpose to be able to move on from that. So thinking about all of those things, about motivators, learning, personality preferences, studies show that even though we're all different and we all have different personality preferences and stresses that we react to, there's generally a very similar approach that we all move through when we go through change. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because it helps you understand a comms approach that you can wrap around your change. This is the change curve. Have you heard of I reckon a number of you would have heard of the 5 stages of grief? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She also designed this, and it's based on that same premise because it's very similar. There are different factors that people go through. You have stage 1 where people go into denial or shock or anger or resistance. that's your first part. A change is happening. This is what's going to happen. You move through to letting go, get a bit more of an understanding, but you're still feeling quite anxious about it, on towards new beginnings right at the end. So you have a transition, new beginning, and the change is accepted. Now this curve here, everybody goes through every single one of those stages. You could start here, or even not really start here, and bounce more towards the anxiety, okay, get this, and then kind of come right. Other people will move through all of those stages, and they will do it fast or slow. It all varies as to how people feel and react to change. And they can also bounce around between a few of these and kind of get stuck along the way. A little bit annoyed, oh, okay, we'll get on with it. Oh, back to being annoyed again. Oh, we'll get on with it now. It bounces around like that, and trust me, I've seen nearly every variation of this curve with people. It's a natural thing, it naturally happens. Does anybody have any questions on any of that? You good with that? Cool. I'll just keep us moving along. So bearing that in mind, you also need to recognise this, that change takes effort. It's not simple to unlearn old ways and learn new ways, whether it's a little change or a big change. You've got to subconsciously get it right. It takes thought, effort. You've got to monitor your behaviours and work through a change. And this is a very simple way. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of unconsciously incompetent through to unconsciously competent. I get tongue-tied trying to say all these things, so I'll let you guys read it. Basically, what it is you're in the here and now, and you don't know what you don't know, and you're quite happy about it. Yeah? And then you realise, oh, actually I don't know how to do this. So then you go into the next phase, which is you're thinking about it, but you're consciously doing it, but it's taking a lot of effort because you're doing this new process, you're doing some new reporting, you're trying to sort your funding from somewhere different, anything like that, but it's very conscious, but you're doing it. And the last stage of moving through your change is when it becomes second nature. When there's less effort, it's embedded, you've made the change stick, everyone's a lot more relaxed, a lot more comfortable. I've got another New Zealand example for this, and that's again last year. It sounds like I'm so last year, but it's just good examples. Remember how they changed the road rule on the left-hand turn? Do you remember that? People still getting stuck on that. I'm pretty sure I saw some people in the weekend turn in front of me, and they would me too. That was a good example, because when that happened, we're all, those of us who drive, used to doing it a different way, and then we had to consciously think, remind ourselves when we went to turn left, do we go, do they go? It's lots of hesitation. But then we came right with that. Now it should be pretty much second nature, bar a few drivers in Wellington. Definitely there. But it's tiring, it takes time, you've got to think these things through. Okay, so that hopefully that's given you a good foundation of change management, how people react, how people need to work through change, what can help them get through change. This here, in a nutshell, this is what communications does, effective communications. It brings people on that journey by doing all of these things, managing your risks, your impacts. Everyone knows what they need to do and when they need to do it. It enables learning, creates capability, builds a guiding coalitions, you've got people leading the change, strengthens bonds, unity, stops the rumour mills, that's such a biggie. In the absence of information, people make up their own stories. And their own stories are never yay, positive stories, always a little bit angsty or a little bit not quite on fact. It reduces anxiety, creates your planning platforms, and it celebrates success.
There might have been a question.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's right. You're probably going to talk about it.
That's all right.
I was just wondering how you obviously have ways of implementing that with people in terms of group meetings, other media or individual
Yeah.
meetings or really stuck, so something negative.
Stuck on something negative, yes, definitely. It'd be, I have so many examples of people getting stuck on negative things. It's identifying that early on and creating the right level of engagement. People will react the way they're going to react no matter how good a journey you put in front of them. It's like with the flag and voting. That was a really good journey, but it doesn't mean that people react well at the end of it. My advice on that is that you try different mechanisms. You give people the most relevant information that's going to help back them and support them. And you put in enough support around them to reduce their anxiety, reduce their learning anxiety about moving through a change. And some of them, it's like working through that change curve. They'll bounce around for a while, but just trust me that if you keep that in place and keep really engaged and connected with that person through individual meetings, or we're talking about groups here, it could be groups, the better engaged they are, the more that angst, that anxiety will eventually dissipate and they'll be able to finish moving through the curve.
Just coming out of that.
Yeah.
Talk about the different ways people learn.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me for the people who read or go to bed and all that, but how do you take the doers through it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It is, I'm trying to think of an example that we would do it at work. Say we bring, I'm going to talk a little bit technical just for a second. We have a new system at work at the moment that we're just about to implement for one part of the business. I have to be quite vague, sorry. These are doers that are going to be using this new system. We've told them about it, we've had meetings with them, but it's all kind of so until they actually get to do it. So part of helping them through that change is I'm going to ensure that they're part of the test plan, so that then they can test and try out the system and be on it from the get-go. We can get their feedback on how we think it's going to work so that they feel really part of the journey. And they're also essential to us understanding that, yes, this is actually going to work and this is going to deliver what they need to do because they're the users of the system. So there's different approaches that you can pop in depending on what that environment is that you're talking about. Bring people in and get them to do some of the work, get them more highly engaged, get them to try out different ways of working, different systems, processes. I know that won't cover off every avenue, but you just got to try and think a little bit outside the square as to what might actually help that person or that group. And don't be afraid to ask them, what would you like to do? If you don't want to sit and listen to someone like me talk, what's the best way that you would prefer getting this information? I do that a lot with stakeholder engagement. How would you like to receive your information? How would you like me to be engaging with you? Oh, we don't want to meet face to face, I'd rather talk to you on the phone, right? So then I'll make sure that that's what I do. So you can get some of that idea back from the people that you're dealing with.
I think that it's also about at what stage in the process the doers you can engage with the doers. So you've done the upfront stuff, you've done for the readers and the learners and the highly engaged. But if you know you've got a lot of doers, it might be at the particular implementation point, that's when there's a lot of people that are going to need all of a sudden to have support or information, because that's when all of a sudden it sheets home to them. So it might be as well a timing thing.
Yeah, timing learning is, I'm just going to jump on that just for a wee second. I'm going to talk about that soon, but we must talk about it now. That's a key aspect, timing your learning. So with Z, all the retail stations that we have around, all the petrol stations have site staff. They're all owned by retailers. When we do a change out to them, and there's lots of changes that go through to the site staff, it's very, very carefully timed. You can't have it too far out in their learning process. It needs to be condensed and flooded right towards the end. And they would be doers rather than readers or listeners, or they don't want to know the theory. They do want to know the why because that helps them understand, but they want to actually just be able to get on and do it. So we don't tell them about a change, which sounds terrible when I've just talked about journeys, until very close to the time when the change is about to happen. The retailers who own the stations, they'll know, so we've engaged our stakeholders at that level, and site staff sit here. we're not going to flood them with that information until just right before the change, so that then they're doing it, then they're using it, and we can make sure that while they're using it and learning it and it's brand new, we've wrapped support around them and embedding the change with them. So another.
Pretty much touched on it, but what I was thinking of was like a point of view where we've got a bunch of doers who know the change is coming, can't do anything for now, and are getting really frustrated. So maybe if that is just the consensus, you will get your chance. We know that this is not the time that you are going to be wanting to engage with most, and this is the time when you'll be able to do the X, Y, and Z.
That's exactly right, and I've got an absolute, we're doing a very similar thing at the moment. They can't do anything until at the moment that they know it's coming. That it is tricky in those instances. That's where having a high level of engagement through your communications to them will help. Recognising the fact that we appreciate you being patient, we appreciate that this must be frustrating, seeing it in the future but not actually being able to do anything with it right now. It's recognising people's efforts along the way will help engage them during that process. It's not an easy fix for situations like that, but having communication steadily in place, even if it's just to recognise, sorry, we said it would be this week, but now it's next week, we're going to keep in touch with you and keep working through this with you. I feel as frustrated as you feeling. Put a real spin on it and recognise that these aren't robots, they're people. It's going to be a bit frustrating for them as they work through it. Cool. Hi.
Do you ever see the people that you're communicating the change to? I mean, it does seem like they're just the receivers. Can they be a resource?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And that's such a key thing. I think a few slides in from here, which is cool, we talk about it now, is stakeholders. So all the people that are touched by change are your stakeholders, and understanding and knowing and identifying who your stakeholders are is something that's critical right from the outset of a change happening, and you need to keep evaluating that as you work through it. It's not a one touch point, it's a continuous touch point, and you bring them into the journey for various reasons. You allow their input, share their ideas, their thoughts, you share context with them. It's a very interactive process rather than a push out process and you just lands on you. So, yeah, cool. So we'll get to some of these points. Top tips for communicating change. There are honestly lots of them. So I'm just going to cover off a few key ones which link into the stuff that we've been talking about. So this one here, communicate early and often. We talked about timing. That's crucial. Thinking of timing of when your comms should go out. And what it is that you're wanting to achieve from your comms. Is it a learning? Is it understanding? Is it to create unity so that you can move through the change? Consider your messaging, that's part of that, your key messaging. Keep it consistent, clear and relevant. There's a tendency, and I'm not saying that we all do this, but there is a tendency when you're the sender of a message that you put your spin on it. You put out what you think people want to hear, but you've just got to make sure it's actually tailored to suit who you're sending it out to. Is it what they want to hear? Is it what you want to tell them? So try and consider that in there. Like I said before, if there's a void of information, if there's no information going out, people will make up their own stories, and they're usually scary stories. They're never usually good stories. Be transparent. We in Z, we have these 5 core values that we stick to very, very closely throughout our business. And one of them is being straight up. And that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't quite work because people are a bit too straight up. But being straight up, say how it is. You don't need all the answers, you don't need all the information to start communicating. Get some messaging out. As I said just before, if you put realness into it, be straight up. We're going to have to do this. I don't have all the details yet, but I'm going to keep you guys informed, and I'm going to share as much as you can, as often as I can from this point onwards. It doesn't have to be all the information out in front, but if it's lacking at the start, people will make up their own information, they'll become disengaged, and it's harder to engage them and pull them back in if you haven't communicated early on and effectively with them.
What's your special technique for getting management to understand that?
I don't know. Talking them through it, creating an understanding with them. I coach managers and work alongside them very closely with their comms, but we have the luxury of doing that instead. That's not always possible if you don't have a change manager or a comms specialist in your organisation. Talking to people and trying to get them to understand the importance of how messaging needs to go out. There's certain messaging, it needs to come from the top. Other messaging needs to come from a co-worker, a line manager. It's different depending on what that messaging is.
Put it on vibrate, it does.
It's quite alright. It's a nice twinkly sound. So in a nutshell, there's no simple answer to that, but coaching and advice and if it means intervening because you feel that the messaging's gone off task, it isn't landing well, then you need to give your managers and senior leaders that feedback. And usually they do respond one way or another. They do respond. Cool. I'll just move on to the next slide. Communicate your vision, the end goal. Just do it over and over again. The first time people hear a message, there's a tendency they'll just listen to what's in it for me. How does it impact me? It's all about me. It's really natural. It's not a bad thing. It's how we react as human beings because, as I said, we're not robots, we're people. We will feel that way. It takes a few goes at hearing the same message sometimes, not all the time, sometimes, to understand the bigger picture. What does this actually mean? Keep communicating your vision, your end goal. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is what's changing and what's not changing. This is where we're going to get to. What's not changing is a really key thing to remember. It's often something that's overlooked, really easily overlooked, but you can create a lot more engagement, reduce a lot more of the angst, the anxiety about change. If you reassure people, we're going to do this recording different, but you're still going to do X, Y, and Z exactly the same. We're still going to all look and feel the same. We've just got this change in recording. I know I've just made recording changes sound really simple. Appreciate it's not. But you just got to reiterate what's changing as well as what's not changing for people. And this one here is what I was talking about with stakeholders. Stakeholder engagement, absolutely key to nailing your comms. So at the start of any project we do in SEED or business initiative, this is one of the very first things that we do. We're putting together a business case for change. Who's this change going to impact? Who's going to be touched by it in any way? Whether they need to be informed about the change, whether they need to make decisions and input into it. Subject matter expert, part of the wider staff, we capture everybody internally and externally on our stakeholder management plan, and then we form an engagement plan and a communications plan around who these people are. You've got to bring them on the journey, you've got to keep them engaged, you've got to give them opportunity to share their ideas, their thoughts, their feedback, and give them context. And that's just a little thing I had at a change management presentation. You can forget important stakeholders, but they won't forget you, and that is honestly true. You forget people, they won't forget that you forgot them.
I worked in the public service for a long time, and,
Yeah.
and very often we would have, consultations.
Yeah.
And sometimes I felt, at the end, very pro forma. We didn't have to work with that. I mean, what the tips were.
Yes. Do you know, I have a very good understanding of that because that's exactly what I used to run was consultation processes, and I know that is how people can feel. So it depends whether you're talking as a person running the consultation process or someone on the receiving end of that process. Ideally, with a consultation process, it needs to be as interactive as possible. If people are asking questions, they've been answered, and it's a is a process where people are engaged and understand and feel like they're being listened to, and I know that that doesn't always happen, and I fully appreciate that. Yeah. And so it's different depending if you're that person that's receiving it and not feeling like you're listened to as opposed to one person doing it.
Sometimes you get the feeling after the changes were put into place that nothing was taken on board.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is quite feedback I don't know quite what to say, because I understand, because I know that it can definitely feel like that to people, and in some cases that is actually what has happened. And then in other cases, I'd like to think the change ones that I run, things were considered, but what might have happened is that the communications weren't done well enough to reinforce back out to everybody, this was considered and this is what we looked at, and give them more information about the process that was worked through to get to that end result, because from outside in it can look like, no, you didn't think about this and you just went straight to that. So it's something to bear in mind.
Yeah, I have something to add to that. And it kind of comes back to Sue's point around leadership, and no change is going to be successful if your leadership are not leading that change. And it's that Z value of being straight up. And as a comms person, often in a change situation, I have said, is this really consultation? And so I think that that's your role as well, is this really consultation? If it's not really consultation and we're not prepared to change as a result of this exercise, how about we be straight up and kind of go, this is what we're not consulting on, this is a given, and this is why. So we're not going to ask you for your feedback. Here's the bit we can shift on. And I think that that's a role we all need to play, is testing when someone says something is consultation and being straight up.
Yeah, absolutely great.
I guess otherwise you're just eating a sandwich.
Yeah.
And that's not a good feeling, No, definitely not. So this leads into that, actually. Lead your communications from the right people. Everyone has someone they'd rather hear news from. Really, truly. You think about it. Who's going to have more weight? Who are you going to find more credible when they come and tell you, we're going to run a consultation process? If it's so-and-so down the hall that, I don't know, I don't want to put a label on the job, so-and-so down the hall you don't think much of, they come and tell you that, we're going to do a consultation process on all of you guys' jobs and we'll get back to you soon. It's not going to land well, apart from the fact I just said it really badly. But if you have someone who's got credibility, who you're going to sit up and listen to, comes and tells you the same message, only better, it will hold more value to you. There's a lot of power in messages coming out from the right people. And that's really that. It's very, very simple context. It's just business change. If it's something that's going to be organisation-wide, say for example, it's a big change, those messages are best coming out from the business leaders. So your senior leadership group, your GMs, CEs, someone high up, someone who runs the organisation, because people want to hear what these key messages are, what this person is going to do to help us lead through this change, how the risks are going to be managed, what these impacts are to us working in that organisation. If it's more of a personal message, which would be about the jobs, consultation, that sort of thing, that's much better coming from someone you're much closer to. It'll be your line manager, your co-worker. So you need to think very carefully about who is that best person to deliver the message. With my role, I write a lot of comms, or I'll sit in behind the scenes and go, right, we need to communicate about this, and this is the approach, and this is how we're going to do it. These are our key messages. But it's not me that sends it out. It's like I have a very covert role. I've written a lot of things, but people in Z won't realise that's actually come from me. It's been done from their senior manager, because that's the best person to hand that message out.
You've also got to remember as well, if you've got different levels of communicator, it's making sure that it's not drip fed at different paces. So, this is probably the case more in bigger organisations, but if you have a message that has to get to everyone at roughly the same time, you can't necessarily rely on managers popped around the place to do that. So there might be some overflow messaging that lets them know it's coming.
Yeah.
But that's the risk, because you do like that personal touch thing. But
yeah, and personal touches can also be done afterwards. So you can have your key message that's come out, which I think is what you're meaning, because it needs to go nationwide, or it needs to go across a wide-ranging audience and hit at the same time. But then you follow that up with appropriate people through the appropriate mediums to reinforce the message.
what that means for your team.
What it means, provide credibility, provide relevance to these people. And there's no one perfect way to communicate. I really want to stress that. You've got lots of options. Choose one, go with it. If it does not quite landing right because you're getting feedback, are you understanding this and you're not really, try a different approach. Don't be shy to change it up. There are many, many approaches that you can take to get your communications across, different vehicles, different pathways. Consider your passengers, who's on this journey. Who are your stakeholders that you're needing to engage with, that you want your feedback from? All of that wraps into your communication. Communication that's creating dialogue. As I said, it's interactive. It's not a one-way outward push of communication. You want it to come back to you. You want people talking, and you want to create that understanding. And keep checking in that you're getting it right. It's no good just popping out communications and a bit of feedback, but are they hitting the point? Are they hitting the spot? Are they doing what they're intending to do, what you're wanting to get from this? The right words motivate, the wrong ones don't. People like stories. I read this thing that said really effective communications appeals to both the heart and the mind. I know that's not always possible in some of the things that you're changing, but it's about making it real to the people that you're talking to. And I was thinking about yesterday, walking my dog, thinking about talking to you guys today, and I thought about this particular slide. And I just did this inadvertently in something in my personal life. I wasn't really thinking about it, and when I broke it down, I thought, this is exactly what I did. I told a story. I appealed to the heart and the mind, and it got me where I needed to be. And what happened was, so I have an 11-year-old. Me and my 11-year-old have been living in this house for the last 2 years, just renting it. Really, really, really want to make this house my own. I wanted to buy it. It's not for sale. And it's been a very long process where I approached the owner with my vision, my future state in mind, really clear on it, and said, listen, this is what I want to do. You're going to sell it to me. Go on. And honestly, this has been a very, very long process. And I tried lots of different communication mediums. I understood this person a lot. They like to use social media. I went through all these other options of communicating with them. In the end, it came down to Facebook messaging. This is how I approached buying this house. And I went through months and months and months of knockbacks. No, sorry, no. Ask again next month. That's fine, because I'm pushing the sale. And then it got to the point where I just went, oh my gosh, I'm getting desperate now. I just don't know what to do. This person isn't budging. They're going round in a circle each month. They're kind of umming and ahhing. And I just went, oh, listen, this is how it is for me. This is me and my daughter's home. This is our opportunity to have our very own place. We've only ever had rental properties. This would mean the world to me. We have family and friends that live nearby. She goes to the local school. It's right by the beach, and we're such beach people. I'd mentioned everything and just put out my heart without, I was getting a little bit emotional at the time, push send on my message. And the shift that happened after that, it went from being a business transaction where they were umming and ahhing over it to something completely different. They came back to me straight away, right, Rach, let's have a conversation and talk about this. And it created such a shift. And so in a nutshell, I've got my house, just bought it last week. So I'm pretty happy. Thank you. And the funny thing is, and I kept walking my dog thinking, yes, I'm going to tell you my story. But there's more to the story. So it got right down to the pointy end of negotiating the price, and I hit my ceiling, single mum, oh my God, I can only go to that far with the price. And I'm like, we're negotiating backs and forwards over email. We moved from Facebook to email at this stage. I'm sitting in bed at night with my laptop waiting for their final offer confirmation to come through. And they did it back to me. They told me a story back. They said, oh, we really like you and my girl. We really feel for you. We know how much this means to you. When we lived in the house, we loved being by the beach, breathing in the sea air. It went on and on and on. It said you can hear the waves rolling at night. I'm sitting there in my bed on the laptop and I went, I could hear the waves. And they wanted a little bit more than my top offer. I went, okay. So it works, and that works. It was a win-win for both of us in the end. So that's my little story.
Can I just ask a question? I think probably a few of the people in the room will be, I guess, communicating change to service users. So I'm thinking in particular, it might be, say, there's been a reduction in your organisation's funding, which has a flow-on effect to the services you provide. Do you have any kind of advice on how to do that well? Because I think it's probably quite easy for us to go, to blame the fund for having the funding, which I don't think is necessarily the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious to know, I mean, it's quite a different audience where it's not like purchasing something from you, that generally accessing a free service, but you might have to be cutting that.
Do you want to? Sue might be the best person to answer.
It's really interesting because it's it is being straight up again and saying why, and if it is a reduction in your funding, you've got to say it's a reduction in your funding. But I guess also if the users of those services are vulnerable, the impact of communicating that. So that's where you've got to obviously the messaging and think about those other things and thinking about what the impact is. And so it is thinking carefully about the messaging, but being really straight up. And I guess it is trying to think about what else can you do, or what else can you offer. But that is the thing. If you got I don't know what the saying is of something wrapping it up as something good, you can't sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you just can't do that. You need to be transparent, open and honest.
I think the thing there too is it's that two-way, and the timing is a two-way, because in that circumstance you've got to give that person someone they can talk to, maybe, so that they can get greater understanding.
The problem in communicating something of that sort is that it may not be affecting the giver of the information, so that you are spreading this unfortunate message and you're being open, transparent and honest, and they're sitting there thinking, yes, but it doesn't affect her take-home pay, or it doesn't affect her working conditions. That's the hard thing, and maybe that is where you need somebody else to give the message.
Yeah, that could definitely be an option.
And that's where context is important, which is that coming back to the why. But it's kind of like shoot the messenger. That's kind of what you're talking about a little bit. So you're in a position where you have to communicate something. You don't want to communicate it, but that's the reality. And I guess you've just got to be open to the fact that the person may come back and be angry with you, and that's probably also that curve a little bit.
It is the curve. And a lot of the organisational change they've done, which has been making people redundant. People will react like that, shoot the messenger. I'm not personally making them redundant, but gosh, I've copped a lot of that because I was the messenger of that. And that's just part of my role, and sometimes whoever that is, that's an extreme example, redundancy, but you do need to just go, okay, let's not take it personally. What can I do to now help support this person move through the change queue? Stop them bouncing around too much, and they do come right. Not in every instance, but there are things that you can do, and it really comes down to good communications and engagement, and communicating with them in the style that they want to be communicated with, getting them the information that they want, answering the questions that they've got, making it as interactive as possible. All those little pieces joined together will help manage a situation like that. You might not end up with might not be everything that gets you and everything's right. rosy, but it will help you work through it in a more positive way.
Can I just ask for some more comments from both you, Rachel and Sue, about where you need to communicate something about the service, but you won't get removed from the service provider so that somebody else is actually providing the service? And do you have any more thoughts about it?
Can you give a more specific example? Just trying to think through in my head about.
So in the example that I'm thinking of, we own the service, but the service is provided nationally around the country by other providers, and those providers are independent.
Yeah.
And I suspect a number of other providers might be.
Which is interesting because that's about, in some ways, a level of control, which you also see in terms of managing volunteers, isn't it? And I think it's what Rachel said, it's around, well, it's using all your levers in communications as one. You may have a contract, but it's around that motivation as well. And again, it just always comes back to why, like trying to get them to understand why the importance of communicating, the importance of giving a particular message, the importance of spending time engaging with the users on this, and what can you provide centrally to help them do that, like key messages or tips on run a forum, and then what do they need to do locally in terms of that personal touch and what tailoring do they need to do. But it is tricky when you don't quite have control right to the end. Yeah. And getting feedback. Being managing issues, being identifying what's going on, acquiring information back from the providers, and being agile to respond to that.
I'm assuming the challenge there is that a lot of it will be remote, so you're not able to do face-to-face meetings or catch-ups. I'm assuming it's across the country.
Yeah, and it just seems like the feedback in some cases, the resistance from the providers is really difficult to manage.
Are you able to understand what the resistors are? Like, are you able to, that could be, and I'm not saying you're not already doing that.
But we also, I mean, the providers are stakeholders, but we also, and they would say that we need to do things that will suit them, which is true, but initially we actually need to do something for us. And maybe I'll talk about the example more specifically.
Yeah, please feel free to do so. We can have a proper conversation. Yeah? Is that cool?
Yeah.
Cool. More
It's
than
quite
happy to
individual.
help.
It is.
And that's the thing with change, is there's so many, yes, these are all change tools, but there's no one size fits all with all this change together. It depends on the situation, it depends what you're working through as to what you can use as a lever, what is going to be best applied to your situation. You need to try something completely different to what I've been saying here, which is also fine. Yeah, more than happy to have a chat. Cool. I think we're just about there. You guys are like, oh, thank goodness. So we've covered this, being interactive, why you be interactive, it builds understanding, gets rid of the confusion, addresses concerns, considers impacts. We've covered this in what we've been talking about, so I'm going to skip through. Change takes effort. Remember that making things become second nature? This is all part of that. Recognise success along the way. Progress is a great motivator. Okay? Don't forget, I think in various projects I've been in, yes, we'll celebrate the milestones, we'll really celebrate at the end. Yes, that's what we've got planned for our biodiesel plant this December. It's quite big. We're going to celebrate that, but it's really important to recognise progress along the way, recognise people's achievement, their commitment. Someone showing up is really, having a great attitude and embracing the change and moving through it. That needs to be recognised. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Say thank you. It's such a small thing. Holds so much value, and it's something you can easily put in to working through change. this was my last slide. This is just the final one that just says, consider your passengers. Communicating the change really is a journey. That's your key takeaway, and all the other levers that